Hello, New Zealand. Welcome to Straight Talk. This is episode number 104. It's the second to last one for the year. And in this episode, well, we often talk about the leaders of the two major political parties, Chris and Chris. But what about the Minister of Education, Health, Finance, Minister of Police, Defence, Foreign Affairs, Justice? Are any of them standing out to the panelists in the past 2 years since their appointment? And what about the offerings from the other side, the opposition? We'll discuss that. Should we make voting harder to do or easier? For example, should you be able to turn up on the day of the election and register to vote and then vote? The government says no. And finally, US surveys suggest that Americans are drinking less alcohol and less frequently, and more people now believe that moderate drinking is bad for health. Moderate drinking. So is New Zealand in the same boat, or glass, you might say? Right, let's check out who's on our panel tonight. Another fantastic lineup. And firstly, coming to us internationally at great cost and at last notice, which we greatly appreciate, Brendan Malone, who is in Melbourne. How are you, Brendan?
I'm very good. Thank you, Bob. It's good to be with you.
Now, Melbourne has been compared to the Mount Eden prison of Auckland. Does it feel like that?
Oh, I'm not going to comment on that. I'm still here.
You're still a guest.
I love it. I love it. The sun is sitting behind me. Make of that metaphor what you will.
I know why you're there. I saw the stage set for your conference. You want to briefly tell us what you're doing over there?
Yeah, I'm here to speak at the Australian Catholic Youth Festival, and they have got 6,000 young people here. So, wow. It's quite the gathering, shall we say, from all over Australia.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, slightly back down to earth and the grass is Sue Reid in Masterton. How are you, Sue?
I'm very well, thanks, Bob.
Okay, you haven't been to Melbourne. If you were going to Aussie as an Aussie girl, you'd be going home to Tasmania, wouldn't you?
I've been to Melbourne this year, and yes, I usually travel through Melbourne, the great Chairman City, and Melbourne Stan. Yes, it's a very, very different place since COVID.
Okay. I mean, funny story. The last time I was in Melbourne was 2012, and I remember it because the quite unexpectedly, or maybe expectedly, the same-sex marriage bill of Louisa Walls got drawn out of the biscuit tin quite by chance, I'm told. And so I had to jump back on a plane halfway through a conference, head back home and set our websites alive. protectmarriage.nz, our campaign began, which suffered the biggest denial of service attack ever for a New Zealand website. I think we still hold the record for that. So that was quite impressive. So that's my memories of Melbourne, sort of, cut short coming back. Anyway, DJ Michael down in Christchurch, who's spinning the discs for us tonight. How are you, Michael?
Well, I'll be a spin doctor, Bob, but I don't think I'm spinning any discs. But yeah, good evening and good evening to everyone.
Actually, I think the guy on your far left is looking for a spin doctor. Simon O'Connor, how are you?
Mm-hmm.
Look, I'm doing well. I'm in my new studio, and clearly I need to do some more work on my lighting. The good thing is it makes my hair look brown, not grey.
Yeah.
I'm loving this.
Yeah, man, that's a beautiful perm. Congratulations to the hairstylist at Mission Bay. Right, the image of the week. This is the new head of Inside Out. Yes, he's just been appointed. He's transgender and a drag queen. So if you weren't concerned about Inside Out going into your child's school, you should be now. Video of the week, which is kind of related, is there's a whole lot of series of woke videos going around, and the latest one is woke farming.
Welcome to Woke Farming New Zealand, where every sheep is safe, seen and spiritually aligned with its commercial identity. Excuse me, has that canine completed bias awareness and inclusion training?
It's a dog. He prefers working companion with inherited behavioural narratives.
And what are the dog's pronouns?
Woof.
So does the sheep have to be LGBTQ for this to work? It's about how the sheep identifies, not how it reproduces. Right, and the price? Double, because inclusion costs. All right, team, before we share, we must confirm emotional alignment and consent. Each sheep has the right to opt out.
All right, and there is a whole series of them starting to be published. It's just done by AI, but very creative. Woke, what was there? There was Woke Airlines, Woke University, Woke Fishing, Woke Rugby. So it just continues. Look, just before we get into our first topic, there was another image that I want to show. Very special morning tomorrow morning, because Simon is turning 100. Sorry. His show is turning 100. Sorry. Let's have a look at this. Now, this is the promo that our team member Rachel did up, which, I mean, that's pretty impressive. But what really got me was, can we just zoom in on that? Look at that. Are those your legs, Simon? Turn your mic on.
I have to say I've been doing podcasting all day, and my mute button is sticky. But no, look, I have to say generative AI is quite incredible, because I'd love to have legs that skinny.
You look suave, man. Look, I just want to add some music here. I mean, what 008 would you be?
Well, I can not confirm or deny whether this is a dry martini in here.
Shaken, not stirred. Okay, very good. Anyway, congratulations. 100 episodes of getting up early. So well done. And thank you for your long-suffering wife for having to put up with you crashing about early in the morning. All right, let's get into it, team. And first topic, we want to have a look at the performance of the government. We always tend to focus on Christopher Luxon and Chris Hipkins, but in fact, there's a whole cabinet of ministers, and I was just looking back at the ratings that the CEOs of the country had given the ministers of the Crown. This was back in September, and top of the pops was Erica Stanford, the Minister of Education. Winston did very well. This is out of 5, by the way. So it's not a fail mark. And Chris Bishop did well. Todd McClay, Mark Mitchell, and then there was Simeon Brown, Health, Judith Collins, Defence, Brooke Van Velden, Workplace Relations, although I don't think she'd be quite as popular now with the old pay equity thing. Shane Jones, who's just good for a laugh, and Chris Penk, who actually isn't even in, is that right, Simon? He's not even in cabinet, is he? So he's doing pretty well. And there was one more. The interesting thing was that the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister weren't even in the top 10. So I'm interested to hear from you as a panel. Which ministers have stood out to you and which have been duds? Brendan Senior in the home of the duddiest Premier that has ever been. And I won't tell you whether I'm talking about the current one or the last one. Anyway, any ministers of the Crown that have stood out to you in the last 2 years?
I think interesting enough for me, I think Simeon Brown really has stood out quite strongly, and he's a minister who's had a couple of different major portfolios and done well in both, which I think, to his credit. I think Erica Stanford with education, and I'm hearing from a lot of educators, even people who have previously been sort of not so much pro-national, they actually quietly in the background say they like her. And lastly, I do think Mark Mitchell, because of what the police have been through, he seems to have been a pretty steady hand, actually. So they really, really stick out for me.
Okay, I'll come back to you and ask if there's been any duds. Let's just go around and do the strengths. Sue, which ones are standouts for you?
Yeah, I agree with Brendan. Were you saying cabinet? Because I took it to mean, so Casey Costello is a real standout for me for portfolios, and she just, she won't give up. She takes a lot of crap from a lot of women, actually, in question time, and she's just relentless. She just won't give up. And, of course, I love what Karen Chor is doing. Chris Penk, I love what he's doing with Defence. And Nicole McKee, she's being a rural area here. We love what she's doing for our rural community, but I'd also agree with what Brendan said as well. They're my standouts.
Okay, so it's interesting. You've picked three out of 4 are women, and the 3 are from the minor parties. What is it? Two from ACT and 1 from New Zealand First, I think.
That's right. Yeah, okay. Yeah. It is a bit hard to sort of, I guess Erica Stanford and there's a lot of people doing those good, consistent jobs. They are doing working with the portfolios in a consistency and doing well. But for the standouts and for Casey Costello's speech on Benjamin Doyle was an absolute standout for me. That's just who she is. She makes a stand.
Yeah. Okay. And the reason we're asking this is it's just over 2 years since the current crop of ministers were sworn in. So they've had 2 years to prove themselves. Some have, some aren't. I'll come back to the ones that haven't for you, Sue. Simon, any standouts from your perspective?
In no particular order, I think Erica Stanford has actually done a really good job in education. I mean, it's only a short sample, but the structured mathematics in the last 6 months is showing really positive signs, and she stood her ground against relentless attacks. Look, I would include Chris Luxon. I mean, his particular performance on topics in general hasn't been good, but he's actually held this coalition partnership together. I think Winston's done a good job in foreign affairs. I mean, it's his natural space. I'd echo Sue. I think actually Nicole McKee and Karen Chaw have actually done a really good job. I mean, Casey, there's a few questions I'd have around the whole smoking lobby, but overall they've held their ground. I'd actually say a big shout out to Simeon, as in Brown. I mean, he's held big portfolios and changing halfway through, which most of the ministers haven't yet, to pivot from transport, which basically the current minister, Chris Bishop's doing a good job, but Chris is basically inheriting all the work that Simeon did, and now Simeon's in health. And the last one is Chris Pink. I mean, he's not in cabinet, but he's pretty much one of the most consistent deliverers of government policy, which firstly makes sense, and also the people understand. He's made the whole building area in particular much more straightforward. So no, kudos to those guys. I think they're doing a good job.
Yeah, and look, could you just explain, because you made that point about Simeon, a lot of people forget that he was Minister of Transport for the first year, lots of changes. He got rid of a whole lot of judder bars, or speed humps as I call them. He put speed limits back to normal speed limits. So there was a whole lot of good stuff. And then he's actually only been the Minister of Health for the last, 12 months. So he's really still getting his feet under the desk, isn't he?
He is. Look, health is a notoriously difficult area because no matter where you focus your attention, there's always going to be more problems. But look, he threw himself into transport. He actually cleared out a lot of the dead wood, reorganised things, basically got bureaucrats that were a problem out of the way. So a lot of what you're seeing happening currently in transport is actually Simeon's work. And I'm sure, I don't know this, but I'm sure it would have been very frustrating to have had to hand all that work over and then move into a whole area, which, is probably not his area of expertise, to be fair on Simeon. He's not a health guy, but he's doing what he can. He's regained the narrative. If you very, very quickly, Shane Retty, for all his qualities, lost control of the portfolio. Simeon has it back in control now. You don't have to agree with everything. We can admit there's still problems in the health sector, but there's always going to be. So no, he's done well. Oh, and by the way, had another child in between, child number 4, so just a few stresses.
That's excellent. Doing his bit for the fertility rate and going forth and multiplying. So well done. Michael, which ones get kudos from you?
Oh, well, look, I agree with the others by and large, Bob. I think Winston is the senior statesman of this government, and particularly in the foreign affairs area, he's done very well. He's got the tenacity and the longevity of his World War II namesake. And in terms of domestic issues, the things that are important to most Family First supporters, I think he's been very good. Shane Jones is, as somebody said, is good for a laugh. He's a counter-puncher, I think, in the mould of Longy and Muldoon, but he's staunch. He hangs in there, and he's not afraid to take it to his dissenters. I like that. Simeon Brown, of course, as everyone's mentioned, he's young, but he's all over his portfolios. He's a hard worker, and he gets things done. And that speed limit changes and getting rid of bumps. I know he's committed to getting rid of road cones. Perhaps hasn't quite succeeded there, but in the health area, of course, probably one of the toughest portfolios. Erica Stanford, she's articulate. She's probably woke. I think, deep down, but she's a good political operator, and she's not afraid to take it to the entrenched teacher unions, which is really good. Mark Mitchell, he's a straight shooter. He seems to be in touch with public opinion, and he's got kudos because he's had first-hand experience in policing. And he always fronts for the media, Bob, which is really good.
Yeah.
So, that
he seems to like the
selection.
media, and they like him, that's for sure. All right, let's just check some of the comments, the votes from the public. Murray says Judith Collins is, we haven't got on to duds, Murray, but that's okay. You can get one in early. Judith Collins is a big dud for me. Simeon is the leader. Leslie says, yep, agree with Casey's speech. It was a very good speech. Kirstine says, I can't think of a weak ACT MP. Most of New Zealand First are pretty good. Also, Chris Bishop also has my attention, particularly his attempts at making housing affordable. Donna Marie says, health is a mess. But Rosie says, well, he's... hang on, what's that referring to? I can, and he still doesn't know what a woman is. Who doesn't know what a woman is? That's got to be Chris Hipkins, is it? Anyway, sorry, Rosie, I'm not sure who you're referring to there. Nancy Margaret says, they gave Simeon a very hard job. I think he's great. Sorted transport, now health. Agree with Sue's comments. Rosie says, that's not Simeon's fault. Labor woefully underfunded it for the 6 years they were in government. Blame Labor. Kiwi Toffee also says, Simeon learning fast on the job. Here we are. Kirstine says, who from ACT doesn't know what a woman is? Well, okay, we might ask them. That'll be interesting. Leslie says, yes to Shane, more intelligent and astute than one would assume. I mean, that was an interesting thing about Shane Retty. I agree with you, Simon. Dr. Shane Retty is a lovely man. He's a doctor, and yet he really struggled in the health portfolio, which it shows that often is the job necessarily about your personal qualifications? Like, do you always put the person that's got the qualifications in that portfolio, or are you really just looking for people with political nous who can take on the policy wonks, lefties in Wellington?
I think it's a mixture of that. I mean, unfortunately, I think for some ministers, I'm not just referring to Shane here, it's not being able to see the forest for the trees. They get captured. Secondly, ministers don't need to be experts in their particular area. You don't have to be a doctor to run health. You don't have to be a transport expert to be, well, the transport minister, nor in defence or whatever else. You just need to be able to make decisions. You're surrounded by experts, and your skill, if you will, is to be able to take that information, distill it, and decide. It's as simple as that. And that was something which I think, unfortunately for Shane, was lacking. He was getting too stuck in the weeds, whereas Simeon is just a much more swift political operator. And Winston's another good example of that. You know, the contrary is someone like Mark Mitchell. Obviously, he's been on the front line with police, but he's able to step back from that, if you will, personal experience and go, right, what am I being told? What are the options? Let's make the decision.
Yeah. Okay, the duds, the ones that maybe have disappointed you or have just been downright useless. Brendan, you got any in that list?
Well, I'm sort of loath a little bit to call anyone downright useless for obviously a lot of reasons. One is, I'm striving to be the imperfect Christian man that I am, but also I think there's a lot of media narrative and hype. It's hard to tell what's really going on half the time. And also people get shuffled around into positions that maybe they're not suited to by outsiders. It's not that they're choosing a portfolio or whatever. But the thing I would say is, I think Luxon for me has been a disappointment as a leader. Willis has not really performed strongly either. They've had moments. I would have added Bishop to that list, but I think what he said in the last week actually about housing affordability has really impressed me, actually, and it shows that maybe he's a bit more astute about the problems in New Zealand. Judith Collins, well, I think she was strong 10 years ago, but not anymore. But the one thing I would say is that I look at ACT and I feel like Karen Shaw is actually quite good. I feel she's more actually a New Zealand First MP, ironically. That's what she feels like at home to me. The ACT Party, apart from Seymour, they feel like they're missing in action and waning. Winston feels like he's growing, but the concern I have is what's behind Winston? Is there any more talent coming through? That's the concern I have.
Okay, and that was just one I was about to get to. Kiwi Toffee said, Shane Jones, I would suggest, is much, much more than good for a laugh. He's a man of substance in more ways than one. And I think, yeah, he might be the secret weapon, or maybe Winston's got another one. I'm not sure. So anybody on your, well, we won't say dud. We're not allowed to. We've got to be nice. Brendan's challenged us on that. So anybody who doesn't quite make the did a great job grade.
I actually felt stronger about who's been the dud. So Brendan's the lovely, nice Christian, and I'm a bit more scathing. So
yeah, we're not going to argue with you, Sue. Okay, go for it.
I'm an Australian. I'll call it as it is. Look, I've been really disappointed with Nicola Willis, and it's right up there. And I look at all the polls, and we often talk about the like you say, the argy-bargy and the race between the two Chris's, but no one has really done polling about between Nicola Willis and Barbara Edmonds. And interesting, Simon just brought up about the qualifications. I think that finance is an area that needs expertise, and I'm just quite flabbergasted that Christopher Luxon has put her in that position. It started out with a lot of promise, but if you hear her in question time, she always is asked a question from her fellow MPs, and it's always a really long-winded words of nothingness, really. And I go, well, what are you saying? And where you're headed here? And it's all this all looks tidy, but really underneath. And Simon's talked about this before, that we're still borrowing really at high rates, and we're not really pulling the economy back, because we've got to be honest, New Zealand's financial state was really in dire straits. Before National came in. So yes, Nicola Willis. The other one was Paul Goldsmith. I've had a lot to do with him with this AI thing, trying to get a comparison, a law that's around the copyright, tightening it up to preempt AI. AI is here, but we still need to tighten our laws. But also what he did with the BSA, he's toothless. He's coming out and he's not saying anything, and he's almost like he's making a joke, and there's some sort of mockery about it, and I just don't think he's serious enough. So, yeah. Oh, and Matt Ducey for his lack of action on puberty blockers. So they're my three duds. See, I feel very strongly about that, Bob.
Yeah. I don't think anybody hasn't got Ducey in their list. Although, who was the one you said just before that?
Paul Goldsmith.
Paul Goldsmith. Yeah. Minister of Broadcasting. Yeah, I think, that was one of his roles. And, he came into that because Melissa Lee was stood down because she wouldn't help out the media. The government hasn't helped out the media, so nothing really changed. So I think she got treated appallingly. But anyway, Simon, who's not on your nice list?
Look, it's a very broad comment, and I hope this doesn't come across as uncharitable seeing I've left the place, but I think most haven't really fired. It's just a lack of direction. And unfortunately, I think that sits at the foot of the Prime Minister. I mean, some ministers just won't be competent regardless of who they are, but there just doesn't seem to be direction and purpose. And so a lot of them fall into this space. Sadly, I agree. Nicola Willis has not fired in finance. She just can't get her head around it. From what I can observe, and has completely lost the confidence across the board, which is unfortunate. Look, Ducey has completely sold out on the gender ideology and continues to put kids at risk. I mean, he's been sidelined now, and I'd expect him to be removed from cabinet in what's anticipated as a January reshuffle. This might come across as a bit paradoxical. It's not a dud. I want to be really clear. I think Mark Mitchell has done a great job. But the spin on this is he's been so successful is that law and order is no longer an issue in the public's eye. And this is the strange thing with politics, and it's why I'm showing it, because this is a real success story for the government. But it's so successful, no one's talking about it. If you look at the polls, law and order is not an issue anymore. Yeah. And so and again, it's not his fault. I really want to underline and bold that. He's done such a good job that it's now a non-issue, and therefore the benefits of the issue for the government have been lost. And the last one is, I'd actually say David Seymour. I actually don't know what the guy's achieved. Huge amount of time, cost, angst around the Treaty Principles Bill. His big thing has been his regulatory standards bill. No one really understands what that is. And his regulations, even struggling to think what it's even called. He set up some new regulations ministry, which no one really knows what it's doing because it hasn't really done anything, but is costing you, the taxpayer, an enormous amount of money. So I think he's a bit of a dud on that, or those fronts.
Yeah. Okay, Michael?
Oh, well, top of the list has to be Matt Ducey, who's a real doozy.
Well, he's from Christchurch. That's why, Michael.
Yeah, well, he's closer to where Brendan lives, actually.
Yes, he's my MP.
Oh, there we are. Is that why you're in Melbourne?
Fault.
Yeah, that's why I'm in Melbourne.
So he's still waiting, Bob, to see which gender his kids are going to choose. And as others have said, he's just a disaster, really. And he's a smarmy sort of a character, it seems. And others have mentioned Paul Goldsmith. He's on my list. He seems a very affable and decent fellow, actually. But politically, he's 3/4 indecision and 1/4 hesitation. He stumbles along. And the BSA issue with the platform, I think, is particularly sad. He just hasn't spoken out about that at all. Many others have, but not the Minister of Broadcasting. So he's quite a disappointment. And as others have said, Christopher Luxon is a big disappointment for social conservatives. He behaves like a manager, which is his background, of course. He's not statesmanlike or skilled in statecraft. He just doesn't have the experience, really. And he just seems to just bleat on about growth and getting back on track, but he's not listening. He's just really not impressive at all. And I think, all of National were elected for real change. And Simon will tell us, real change in your first term in government's pretty hard. And some good things there, but he's just not impressive, Bob.
Okay, I'm going to quickly ask you, if you were the Prime Minister, what key change would you make in January? What key position would you make or change? My one is I would completely disband the Human Rights Commission, and I'd create a ministry for families where every bit of legislation is tested to check whether it actually strengthens families and marriage. But anyway, that's just me as Prime Minister. You don't have to vote for me. Just check. Leslie says, everyone can criticise the MPs in the coalition, but the Left Marxist Alliance will, well, let's hope could likely, not will, win the next election if the Conservatives don't come together now. So that is very true. Right. If you were Prime Minister, Brendan, would you make any change in January? Any key change?
To what, the cabinet?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would. And some of them, like we've already heard some of the proposals here tonight, and I don't think any of those I disagree with. I actually like your idea, Bob. I really think we've actually got to break the shackles of liberalism, and the only way to do that is to recognise that the fundamental unit of society is not a radical, autonomous, self-choosing individual, but instead it is the family. And so you've actually got to get serious, and there's got to be policy, and there's got to be dedicated ministries to focus on that.
Yeah. Sue?
I'd dismantle the Ministry of Women. They don't know what one is, and it's a waste of time, really, because they're pandering to the trans agenda. So, and I'd also change out Nicola Willis. I think she is the weakest link in the whole coalition. See, strength.
Look, there's clearly some ministers we should move on. I mean, Matt Ducey is one of them. There's a bit of reshuffling that could be done. I mean, Nicola Willis shouldn't be in finance, but there is no way that Luxon will move her out. But what I think is needed more than a reshuffle is just a clear direction and vision from the senior leadership, and allowing ministers to actually get on with their jobs. And at the moment, that's just not happening. They're just not sure what to do. They're not clear what the direction is. And so you're seeing this halting dynamic. So until that changes, which I don't expect will, you're not going to see the performance that we expect.
No. Okay. And Michael?
Oh, well, Bob, I'd love to see the end of both TVNZ and RNZ. I think they should go. The Human Rights Commission, the Broadcasting Standards Authority, I think the local government reforms didn't go far enough. The profligate waste in local government is just appalling. And, I think the list could go on, Bob, but there we are.
Yeah. I'm voting for Michael Reid. All right, let's continue. Let's just look at the other side, and just to remind you, this is them. So this is all the Labor opposition, but I think I just want to highlight probably this image. So this is the top 12, and the interesting thing about the top 12 in Labor is that they, Simon, you might need to correct me if I'm wrong on any of these, but they all served under Jacinda Ardern. So they've just come away from a conference where they've spent the whole time actually trying to say, well, we're not going to be like the old Labor, we're the new Labor, and yet all the personnel are the same ones that, I mean, they're led by Hipkins and Cipollone, who took us through that torrid time between 2017 and 2023. Simon, do you think they can actually shake that perception?
They're trying very hard to shake the perception, but there is nothing new about that lineup. In a way, to be fair, similar when National lost in 2017, the lineup afterwards was pretty much the same crew that was under, well, Sir Bill English, but mainly under John Key. There was no renewal. And that's a big challenge, I think, for Labour as they head into next year. There isn't really anyone new. This is the Jacinda COVID Hipkins era, just rolling on through the same ideas. They're trying to package them up differently. The media are doing all they can to support them, the mainstream media. But it's the same tired old crew. And, as most viewers will probably anticipate, I'm about to say, leopards don't change their spots.
Is there anybody in that opposition list that have impressed you that you would be happy to have in your cabinet if you were Prime Minister?
I actually really rate Barbara Edmonds. I worked with her when she was the Minister of Internal Affairs, and I was a shadow minister. I actually really rate her. I rate her personality. I rate her honesty. Whether she's up for the finance role is a whole separate question. But if I was to phrase it this way, who there has integrity, she's someone I'd put at the top of the list.
Okay. Brendan, is there anybody that stands out in that Labor Party group?
Simon beat me to it. Barbara Edmonds, mother. She's a mother. She's a good woman. She's a lawyer. But the problem I think that she's probably going to encounter is that the Labor Party, much like a lot of left-wing parties in the West, are happy to bring in people from other ethnic backgrounds, but they don't really tend to let them flourish in the way where I think the party would be strengthened. And I think that's sort of that traditional Pacifica, Christian background, that family background, that's so missing in the country right now. But what's going to happen is the white liberal sort of progressive faction are just going to dominate everything and take control. So, and I also look at the Labor Party and I think right now they are saying some of the right things. But like Simon, I think where's the actual solutions that you can trust? And all I hear are what sounds like shades of Working Group 2.0 again. Yeah.
Michael, any Labor minister or portfolio holders that stood out?
No.
And you'll notice that I haven't put up any offerings from Te Pāti Māori or Greens because I can't find any. But anyway, so no, none for you? None from that list?
I've had some contact with Megan Woods on the ground, and she, I have to say, is an effective local MP. And even though she's moving to the list, but she is out and about, she's meeting people, she's connecting, she's totally committed on the ground. But Bob, ideologically, we've got to look beyond personalities. And that lineup there are either hard Marxists or Fabian socialists, which is soft Marxism. And that ideology is to be resisted.
Okay. Perfectly summed up. Sue, do you want to add anything to that?
It's funny because I was going to say the same thing. I mean, you're dragging me to this, Bob. Look, I'm a conservative blue, it's really hard. But like Michael said, it's about the ideology. It's not about the person. And I'm just so opposed to their ideological views, their stance on women, and their stance on unions and the way that they want to tax us. They can't tax us into prosperity and all those things. So they are, they're so opposed. I would say that Ginny Anderson actually performs really well in the House, and she actually is quite funny. She if she really misses her point, and she just gives up, and she realises where everyone else, like your Willows and your Chloes, they just sort of sit there quite surly and really hate it when they're debated down. But I'm sure they're all very nice people. I actually know Kieran McAnulty here in the Wairarapa, and we have a history with when my husband stood for politics here and over the years with politics. He's actually a really nice guy, but we are definitely opposed in, the abortion, euthanasia, women and trans debate. So, yeah, I look, you really dragged me to this, Bob.
Okay, there was a Labor Party conference at the weekend, and basically this was the media coverage basically saying that Labor spent most of the weekend saying, look, the worst thing we can do is go into the election promising left, right and centre, which sort of sounds familiar from previous Labor parties, and then deliver nothing. So it seems like they have sort of learnt their lesson. And the other article that came out today said that there was a Courier Market Research poll that said that basically there's an even split between Labor voters as to whether they should disown Te Pāti Māori, basically say we won't go with them, even though they absolutely need them to I think, to become government. So anyway, some interesting stuff, but there's going to be lots of discussion of that next year. All right, let's talk about voting. And the Justice Committee has come back with a bill that's been presented, and well, they're arguing that the bill would prevent same-day enrolments. You've got to enrol 13 days before election day, so you just can't turn up on the day. It would ban prisoners from voting, and the Electoral Commission can also update someone's address directly following a data match. So that sort of saves a bit of time, in my view. Now, Labor doesn't like it and said that it would roll back one of the most accessible voting systems in the world and would suppress votes. The Green Party said that it would just harm the busyness and chaos of the everyday life of particularly young people and would have lifelong effects. And Te Pāti Māori said that it would rig the next election. The other thing that they're banning is giving, what they call it? They call it a treating. Is that where you get food when you turn up to vote, Simon, or someone comes around to pick you up and says, get in the van, have an ice cream and we'll take you to the voting booth? Is that treating? What's treating?
That's treating. So, giving free food, gifts and so forth. Yeah, that's treating. It's not
is
part of
free
New Zealand
transport
system.
treating?
No. I mean, that's not an unusual.
Okay.
I think most parties would actually take vans and pick up people from retirement villages, for example, and bring them to the voting booth. That's not treating, but giving you free Coca-Cola and chips and sausages, that is.
Right. Okay, well, Te Pāti Māori said that these things will affect only left-wing voters, it seems, and they said the expansion of treating offences was criminalising tikanga, and the early enrolment deadline ignores the lived realities of Māori voters. So, Sue, I might start with you. Should we be making voting easier or harder? Are these good provisions, or do you think we should, basically allow for the fact that some people can't organise their life and just getting to the voting booth is a major achievement anyway?
Well, get organised. It's voting. It's a really, it's a hard fought for, especially for women. It's a hard fought for right. And we have a system that values the vote, and it shouldn't be trivialised. It shouldn't be dumbed down. I've actually worked on booths and in the election, and the lead up to the last election was fascinating. And the lengths people go to, people with disabilities coming in the van to the booth, and the upholding of their rights to privacy. And so because I was independent, I could go and make sure that they're voting correctly. So there's no influence there. But it's a really, really hard for right. And it's something that should be protected. And I've said it before, I actually think that the voting age should be raised to 21. So, that's a bit out there for a few people. Look, this nonsense about, well, who says this about Māori? There is no one view for Māori. And we've got to get away from this narrative that says we've got to enable, we've got to help this. It's really, really a bad message. Get out there and vote. You've got a broad selection. There's always someone there to vote for and who best represents your values. So we've just got to value this a lot better and just be organised. Be an adult about it. We're not children anymore.
Okay, I think it was Willie Jackson. He said that, government's just trying to rig the next election. Simon, you've had some experience in this. It's interesting.
Rigging?
How many did you rig now, Simon?
It's interesting that all the left-wing parties are saying, no, you got to make it much easier, no restrictions. All the, right-wing parties are saying, no, let's have some accountability, get your life organised. If you can't get your life organised, you shouldn't be allowed to vote. It's almost a behavioural response, isn't it?
Look, to be blunt, what Willie's saying is just BS. If there is any rigging, it's coming from the left that wants a much more open, easy to manipulate system, which is sadly what we've seen already. People who are turning up on the day and masquerading as a number of personalities. So look, it's an issue, not a substantial issue. I better be clear. I don't think our elections have been undermined, but actually, without these changes, these manipulations, these mischiefs can continue. So this whole treating issue, the Manarewa Marae was a good example. Enormous amounts of money was being put in effectively to draw people in to vote, in this case for Te Pāti Māori. And viewers should remember that Te Pāti Māori won that seat by 42 votes over Labour as they held all their sausage sizzles and so forth. Look, registering before 13 days of the vote, that's, by the way, just before advance voting starts, is a no-brainer. You want the list, or the electoral roll, rather, to be set as the voting starts. You've got 3 years. If you can't get off your derriere before that, there's a bigger problem. The only issue I have is I actually sit on the side that I believe prisoners should be allowed to vote. It's not always the most popular view, but I personally hold that prisoners should be able to vote for the system which incarcerates them. I don't think it changes the nature of voting. That's just my, I suppose, philosophical view. But overall, these are good changes. But to return to where you started, the left wing will cry about access, equity, and all of these things. It's got nothing to do with it. At the end of the day, the openness of our system has allowed abuse, and it's time we just tightened up a little bit around the edges. As I say, you've got 3 years to enrol to vote. Oh, and by the way, that data checking, so that you don't have to automatically, or rather can automate, that's great. Makes sense. Why not?
Yep. Okay. Michael, should we be making it easier or harder?
Bob, I don't think that's the question, really, to make it easier or harder. We just want to encourage responsible citizenry, really. And I think from the material that you gave us, it looks like a reasonable bill to me. And I perhaps disagree with Simon about the prisoners voting. I think that that's actually part of the punishment. You've offended civil society, and that's part of paying the cost in my book. But the Labor Party saying much of this legislation has the effect of suppressing voting. Where's the evidence for that, Bob? I'm sure that's not there. And the Green Party, of course, particularly concerned about young people. Well, of course they would say that because they rely heavily on that youth vote, particularly the protest sort of vote against the establishment. And I'm not sure what Te Pāti Māori is really on about when it's saying that it would rig the next election and disproportionately impact our rangatahi. How would it do that? They're not saying how that would do that. I think, and it comes back to being a responsible citizen and being accountable, as others have said. And it's not too hard, Simon, to get off one's derriere to to vote and to enrol and vote. It's a sloppy system. I think if it's made fast and loose, we saw some of the swirling allegations about Te Pāti Māori in the last election. It needs tightening up, Bob, and I think it looks like that this bill will do that.
Okay, Brendan, do we need to allow for the fact that some people just can't get their life organised, show a bit of grace? As the only Christian on the panel tonight?
No, well, here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say that I think you have to be either extremely naive or extremely dishonest if you're trying to make me believe that a person who registers on the day has actually prepared well enough to vote, that they know who and what they're voting for. Seriously, I will not believe that. I'm Irishman enough to know that's a nonsense. So yeah, I think you've got to tighten that up. So that's point number one. I think tightening it up is good. I agree with Simon. I think prisoners should be able to vote. And I also think it's a bit of a distraction, actually, because if every prisoner in the country voted all the same way, it would not have any meaningful impact upon the election. So it's a nonsense. Like somehow they're sitting in prison and they're going to sway an election. That's what seems to be the argument that some are suggesting here. Obviously, Michael's making a different case, but I actually do agree with Simon. I think that, the system that incarcerates you, and remember, not all offenders are the same as well, their level of offending. The last thing I'd say is this: I actually think, and I think the panel probably enunciated it here tonight, is that the stakes do have to be higher. As I'm getting older and as I'm reading more history, I am actually thinking that we've probably loosened up democracy far too much. And I think that if you don't have meaningful stakes, like you have a genuine relationship with the government of accountability, where, like, for example, property owners in the past were the only ones who were allowed to vote. That made sense. And I think that kind of a level of stakes, we've got to start thinking that way again, because otherwise you just end up with the feels, what feels good in the moment. And if it's too sloppy, you can register on the day. Well, if you're the Green Party, you're just going to sign people up on the day and get them to tick your box. And then they go away and they go, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. It's too late at that point, though. The stakes are a bit higher.
So this is what you call a patsy question in Parliament, Simon. It's one right down your alley that you're going to love. What is it about left-wing voters that left-wing parties think they can't organise themselves to vote and show responsibility?
Well, it's an arrogance. Those who are the elites on the left believe everyone else are needing of them, are victims, are weak, are stupid. It's the paradox of the left wing. They basically talk down to their voters constantly, and actually are putting them down. I'm going to put words into Brendan's mouth now, but he and I would probably both talk about the innate dignity of the human person. And when it comes to the left wing, by and large, they don't see that dignity. They see a whole lot of victims that need their help. Hence, the left wing are always talking on their behalf, making excuses for them, trying to bend the rules, and so forth. And ultimately, it's actually quite insulting. I think most people are actually quite capable of registering to vote, to turning up to vote, and to exercise their judgment. But that's not the narrative of the left. But you may need to give Brendan the right of reply in case I've misrepresented his view of dignity.
You're 100% spot on, Simon.
Okay. Michael, did you want to comment on that? Why do left-wing parties have low expectations?
Well, Bob, we could say all sorts of things in response to that.
Loaded question.
Look, yeah, it is a bit of a loaded question. Look, I just want to say I believe in the rights and dignity of the human person as well. So leave it at that.
I would just like to clarify that the number of prisoners, this is just information, which is interesting, is just under 11,000 inmates. So if they all voted for the same party as Brendan suggested, they do. I want to know which party it is. That would represent about 0.4% of the vote. So, yeah, you wouldn't even make the grade. Sorry, Simon, I do have to ask you, in your campaigns for Parliament, because you did 5 of them, did you ever go into a prison to campaign?
No, I used to go into prisons in a former profession, but not for campaigning. Partly, to be fair, there were no prisons in the Tamaki electorate.
Really? Wow, that's NIMBYism at the worst. Okay. All right, sorry, we're getting distracted.
I could make a joke about retirement villages if you wanted, but that's probably inappropriate.
That's a lovely place to retire. Right, let's just move on to our final question. Very interesting, just what's happening in the US, and I'm interested to find out if it's the case in New Zealand. So America's self-reported drinking is down to 54% after consecutive declines. The belief that moderate drinking is bad for health has risen to a new high, and drinkers report drinking less and less frequently. So just a quick look at these graphs. So this is the US. You can see there it's dropped to 54 drinking alcohol. The ones that I've circled is where the biggest drop is. Women, the younger generations, and Republicans by quite a lot. Democrats still need their alcohol. Well, if you voted for Biden, no wonder, and Harris. The perceived health effects of moderate, so this is moderate drinking. That dotted orange line is bad for health. You can see there's been a big increase. So the message is getting through that even moderate drinking is bad for health. Perception alcohol is bad for health by age. You'll notice the top line is the green line. That's the younger generation. That's the Gen Z, young millennials. They're more concerned. So alcohol industry should be worried. Number of drinks consumed in the past week has dropped after that little flurry in, well, that was during COVID. No, 2000. And then preferred beverage, beer is still just top, but there's been a drop in wine. So maybe it's a health. Now, I know you're asking, what about New Zealand? Let me show you. So just a reminder, what was the US? The US was 54% that they sometimes drink. For New Zealand, it's 75%, 74.9. So we drink, a lot more of us drink than in the US. And so this is New Zealand health data that's just come out. And when they asked, are you a problematic drinker? 16.6% admitted they were. There has been a slight drop. Look, just simple question. Is this the case in New Zealand? Do you think that the use of alcohol is dropping off, and are the health harms of alcohol coming out, or will we continue to be, well, I guess they've always referred to us, haven't they, as a nation of drinkers? I'm not starting on you first, Brendan, for any reason or any history, but what do you reckon?
I've got two takes on this, Bob. I think I expect there will be a decrease. I've been thinking about this for a while. Younger generations do seem to be a bit more focused on, well, for whatever reason, there's just not as much drinking going on. I think health factors, a lot more people are very conscious of alcohol, and the tolerance your body has is not as high as people probably had previously thought. I think there's also a cost of living factor that definitely appears to be kicking in. But at the same time, though, I have a certain sadness. I mean, alcoholism and binge drinking and excessive drinking, that's a problem. But I think for me, there's something, if I would think it would be a great sadness in the world if for example, I personally am a fan of whiskey. I'm a bit of an aficionado, and I drink it for the taste and the flavour and the whole process of creating whiskey. And there's a whole art and a science to it. And to me, it would be sort of a sadness if all of that was lost. I'm a bit of a fan of G.K. Chesterton. A good cigar and a drink every now and then is a good thing for a person's soul. But yeah, so if we became sort of these almost atheistic secular Puritans who are petrified of death, and that's why we're not touching the stuff, that's not a great sign.
Okay, Sue, I mean, it's interesting that the younger generation are the ones that are dropping the most in terms of their usage and are most concerned about the health effects.
Yeah, so anecdotally, and because I have children who are young adults, and I have seen over the years that some of that has changed, and they're very conscious of their sport. So they'll be drinking or no drinking alcohol before a sports game. And for their health, a lot of them are training and do fitness and tramping and outdoor stuff, and they're really conscious about what they put in their bodies. There's a lot more alcohol-free options in the supermarket, or like on shelves and in stores. So just anecdotally, interestingly, So my husband went to the marae this weekend for a family tangi, and he came back and without knowing about this topic, he said it was really interesting. No one under 40 there. It was a big, really big tangi. No one under 40 was smoking, and he said they weren't drinking either, and no vaping. And the alcohol was being consumed by the older over 60s. And he said they didn't touch it, but he said there was a time in the evening where it rolled out. And he said he wasn't there to sort of see if it got out of hand. But they've tidied that up on the marae for over the years. And some marae are now alcohol and smoke-free as well. So, so anecdotally, I see that trend coming through with our young people, and that's really encouraging to see. So, so that was really interesting to just, anecdotally, but also in our town.
Okay. Simon, I know you've been on the Health Select Committee. I mean, there must have been a lot of discussion around social harm caused by alcohol abuse. Do you think there's been some good progress made, some strategies that came out even during your time on the committee?
The short answer is no. I mean, the first part of your statement and question is true. There was a lot of time devoted in the health committee to discuss this, lots of discussions. I don't think the situation we're observing here in New Zealand or the US is because of any particular policies. I'll be honest, I don't quite know what the answer is. A bit like Sue, anecdotally, when I think of my stepkids, just alcohol's just not a big part of their life and culture. I want to be clear, this next comment's not about my stepkids, but vaping has become quite a big thing for a lot of young people. But even then, I don't see that as a simple switch. I just don't fully understand what's happening, but I'm glad it's happening because, look, we know the harms of alcohol, even though probably most of us drink. It's an acceptable harm that we take on board. As a fellow Catholic with Brendan, I can appreciate a good whiskey and the odd cigar, which has been a couple of years actually. But there is. Yeah, there we go. We're splitting the ecumenical debate here, but I just don't fully understand why the change is occurring. But the fact that it is a good thing, not only for the individuals but for society as a whole.
Yep. And by the way, as I highlighted in a McBlog last week, the rates of cannabis use also have decreased. And I'm just looking, you mentioned about the vaping, Simon. The ASH survey, which surveys more than 30,000 Year 10 students, they've just released their latest survey. It was 10% of kids were vaping in 2022. It's dropped to 7.1 that vape daily, and less than a third have ever tried it. So it is moving in the right direction. So it seems like Michael, younger generations are actually thinking about the health implications of drug use, vaping, alcohol, and that can't be a bad thing.
Oh, Bob, absolutely. Look, firstly, I just want to commend our Catholic brethren here for their massive disclosure about their habits. Please be reminded, brothers, that the confessional is open to you. Now, Bob, Homer Simpson said that alcohol is the cause of and solution to all our problems. So there is this ambivalence out there, isn't there? But look, I think you're right, Bob. I think younger generations are getting the message about alcohol, particularly hard use and binge drinking, etc., and that it is a toxin. I remember doing a seminar some years ago with a chap called Doug Selman, who was a professor in this area, and he wasn't a teetotaler, I don't think, but he was certainly, he had all the data about the abuse and what this stuff does to the body if it's consumed in large amounts. And I think our young people are getting that message, Bob. I agree with Brendan. I think perhaps part of the stats, if they're trending in the right direction, is because of the cost of living realities. I mean, particularly spirits. The hard stuff is pretty expensive. But Bob, we do have a traditional drinking culture. I can remember, as most of us can, Jenny Shipley's laws, the legislation allowing 18-year-olds to buy alcohol, and she spoke of a sort of sophisticated sidewalk culture. Well, it's not like that, I don't think, but things are heading in the right direction, and be different to America, of course. But we also, Bob, have a real problem with high availability of supply outlets, especially in lower socioeconomic areas. And I think that many communities are fighting hard against that. There's some positive and encouraging things there. Yep.
And zero alcohol as well, which is a positive. A lot of people feel like they need to be part of the group but want the zero alcohol. So that's positive. All right, team, you've done fantastically well. And for that, I'm going to let you go on time. Just a reminder, Gordy, could we just see the image of 00 just with accompanying music? So this is for tomorrow morning. The 00 episode of Daybreak was, not Daybreak, Solid Ground. I better get the right program. Solid Ground, tomorrow morning, 100th episode with Simon O'Connor and his new legs. Amazing what AI can do. But anyway, thank you for watching. Brendan, special thank you to you. Special effort to make it from Melbourne, especially when it's so early in the morning over there. Is it?
Mate, it's 7 o'clock at night here.
Dinner time. Okay. Okay, well done. And thank you, Sue, Simon and Michael. And thank you for watching. We'll be back for our final show next Monday night. Don't forget that 100th episode tomorrow morning. Have a great night.